Welcome to Healthy Pets, Healthy People. I'm your host, Dr. Edmund Sulkowski, and I'm sitting here with my little Tucker. And we have a wonderful show for you today with a special guest. And I think it's a topic we've never discussed before, and I thought it was so imperative that we do so because it's a crazy world on the streets that we drive. And so let's welcome my good friend, Darlene Butka. Darlene, welcome. First time on Healthy Pets, Healthy People.
Thank you.
Or Healthy Owners. I get those
Yes.
two confused. Healthy
Sure.
Pets, Healthy People is the radio show at AM
Right.
1250.
Right.
But anyway, that's my fault for naming them differently.
I'm excited to be here, Edmund.
I'm glad to have you here,
Thank you.
Darlene. Darlene is an insurance agent.
Yes.
She's a concierge insurance agent. And I'm going to ask her to tell us a little bit about what that means. But our topic today is what happens if. And that was a delicate way to name what happens if you're in an accident on the roads. What are the steps that you need to do? What is Pennsylvania state law as it applies to accidents? Or what if you got bit by a dog? You know, there are certain steps that you need to do, and we're going to have that described to us by Darlene. So first of all, Darlene, welcome again, and tell us
Thank you.
what you do as a concierge insurance agent.
As a personal concierge insurance agent, it's really basically very simple. All I do is advise my clients, talk to them, and tell them what the rightful action is. Many people don't know what they don't have until it's too late.
So you mean being underinsured and you think
Absolutely.
you're covered for a tree falling on your house and you're not?
Correct.
Yeah.
Or your neighbor's tree falls on your house, so you think, well, your neighbor's going to pay for that, and they don't.
And you know, I always say this on the radio show, knowledge is power, and you're able to empower yourself once you gain that knowledge.
It's true.
And you don't want to find out after the fact.
And everybody does.
And everybody does.
And because the most precious thing we have, other than our health and our family, is our time. And people don't want to take time to sit down with their insurance agent and review every coverage. And it's important. It just...
Yeah, everybody kind of worries about what the premium is.
Right.
But that is there, it's sort of like what way I view health insurance, Star, is that I don't want to have to see my health insurance until I need it.
Absolutely.
But I want to make sure I have coverage once I do need it.
I have to say that I think the worst thing is to tell someone when they call you and say they've had this loss, to tell them they're not covered. That is a disservice to people. People pay their insurance premium their whole life, and when they need it, to be told that they don't have it, it's wrong. So especially today, because when the economy's down, people tend to sue more than ever, and that's a fact of life.
Fortunately, we have some good people in Washington that are raising our economy. It's the best it's been in a long time.
I have
so.
heard that,
Yeah.
yes.
So I hope that stays. But anyway, we're not a political show. But let's talk about some of the state laws in Pennsylvania. Am I required as a resident of Pennsylvania and a licensed driver to have, and I own a car, to have insurance coverage?
Absolutely. And the law reads, whoever the name appears on the title of the car, that person must have a policy in their name. So many people call and say they want to put their mother's car on their policy, or they want to put their brother's car on their policy. And many people don't even tell their agents. They just call and say, I want to add this car. And if there is a claim, they can deny it.
So it isn't that I'm a licensed driver that requires insurance, it's the owner of the car.
Correct,
So
yes.
Technically, without insurance coverage, you shouldn't be able to get a license plate, and you shouldn't be able to register the car
Correct.
or get it inspected.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Does that slip through the cracks sometimes?
Depends on where you're having it inspected, but yes, it has. I had one friend of mine who said that they gave their old car, their ID card to the gentleman who was inspecting their car, and he accepted it, and it was 3 years older car.
Yeah, that's
so
asking
you can
for
see how
trouble.
that, yes, it can happen.
Yeah. Insurance is so important. Again, you don't want to use it because you got a scratch on your car. You want to use it when
For the important things, absolutely. And that's why today everyone is going with higher deductibles, because it's the catastrophic, it's the big loss that you want to cover, and you don't want there to be a problem.
So let's talk about some specifics here regarding driving on the streets here. Now,
Okay.
I know you see everybody on the phones, and I'm guilty of that myself. You know, I'm a little more alert when I drive and on the phone, I think, actually, than when I'm off the phone, because I'm paying attention. But you can get lost in a conversation and miss a turn or forget where you're going. I see it. Are cell phones a bigger problem now, causing accidents?
Absolutely, because everyone has them now. Years ago, not too many people had cell phones, and certainly they weren't using them in the car. But now they are, and it is the #1 reason for most accidents today.
And we call that distracted driving?
Absolutely. And then, of course, the second reason is falling asleep. People are overtired, I guess.
And that's throughout the day, or is it?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So they fall asleep while they're driving and have an
It
accident?
can be 2:30 in the afternoon, right?
Yeah.
So that's serious.
So if I'm on my cell phone and I cause an accident, whether it's hitting somebody from behind or cutting somebody off and they hit into me, am I at fault because I'm on the cell phone?
Pennsylvania is a comparative negligence state, and many people don't know what that means.
I
but
don't.
Basically, what it means is that they are good. If you are on your cell phone, they can actually, with all the technology today, they can check and see that you were in fact on that cell phone. And if it was your fault, you will be deemed liable. Because in Pennsylvania, we know 2 facts. 1, if you make a left-hand turn, you're automatically at fault. And 2, if you're backing out of a parking space, you're going to be at fault.
Boy, that is so difficult. You go to the mall, whether it's the big mall or strip mall, or you're trying to back out of your driveway, it's almost like cars come out of nowhere and want to hit you.
It's amazing how people, when you have the right of way, they're on that road or that path, in the parking lots, they just think that they own it, and the poor person backing out is liable. Yeah.
No matter if you're backing out and you're 3/4 of the way out in the turn,
Correct.
and then somebody hits the side of your car, it's your fault.
Exactly. And that is a shame, but it is our state. It is a comparative negligence state. It's difficult.
Yeah. So you want to make sure you have appropriate coverage there.
Absolutely.
But I mean, how do you avoid that? I know my car has a backup camera, and it also has beepers that tell you when a car is coming in your path. And I can't tell you how many times that saved me, because you have blind spots when you're trying to back up.
Absolutely.
And half the time we're a little lazy and we don't bother to turn our necks.
That's true.
And look, and you're wrapped up in what your next move is once you leave this store that you're at, and you want to go someplace else.
Sure.
Your thoughts are wrapped up in that, and you just put your car in reverse and back up.
And what's interesting is a lot of people don't have those cameras. Yeah. A lot of people don't have the sound system. So you're dealing with so many, today, more young drivers than ever.
So it almost behooves you to back in a parking spot so that when you pull out, you're pulling out.
I think it does, if you can master that, which a lot of people have.
Mastering,
It does. And some places say head-in parking only.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. So if you have an accident, what are some of the steps that I'm required by law to take?
Well, first,
regardless of the degree of the accident, we're going to be a little more specific as we go in our conversation.
Right, because the severe accidents, of course, a police officer called to a scene will not do a police report unless someone is treated by an ambulance, taken to a hospital or treated there on site, or a car has to be towed. They will do what is called an incident report. Now, for both things, a police report will be more specific. They honor them in a court of law. They have the name and address of the witnesses. The most important thing for me, and I've been doing this many, many years, is if you have an outside witness. Any witness or person in the cars that are involved in the accident, they can't count their statement. But any outside witnesses, it's just important to get a name and a phone number.
And sometimes people are a little reluctant to get involved.
Absolutely.
In the situation.
Yep. But because serious accidents, I've known people who have lost their homes because they were underinsured. And it's very important to have a witness, and very important to always call the police.
So regardless of how minor the accident is, you should call the police?
I think so, because even though it's just a little fender bender.
Tucker agrees.
Sweet, he does. A little fender bender, nothing much. Most police say, just have them exchange information and leave the scene. Don't block up the intersection or the road. But there is a 2-year statute of limitation where that person can say that they have injuries. And 6 weeks down the road, a person can wake up in the middle of the night with muscle spasms or even paralyzed. I mean, anything can happen. I think you're wise to document everything you can.
Does taking pictures help? I mean, we all have cell phones and we all have the ability to take a picture.
Yes, I think it's very valuable, absolutely.
And even recording.
And always take a picture of the person's driver's license, their ID card, because these things, I can't tell you how many people are so shook up when they're in a mishap, no matter how small, how large, they forget to even get the person's name and phone number.
Absolutely.
And they leave the...
Adrenaline kicks in, and when adrenaline kicks in, it actually changes your whole thought process.
Absolutely. When you said that, I thought of all the people who say, no, I'm fine. Well, no, you have to be treated. You're not fine because your adrenaline's pumping. And then the next day, then they end up going to the hospital.
I could cite a personal example, not regarding an accident, a car accident, but I'm allergic to bees. I go in anaphylaxis.
Right.
I carry a bee kit with me, adrenaline and so forth. Well, I had an attack that attacked 2 of my dogs, and I was being stung. My adrenaline was pumping so much. These were yellow jackets, ground ones that are vicious. There was a swarm of them, and one of my dogs had gotten into the swarm, had agitated the nest.
Wow.
And she was covered, the other dog was covered, and I was being stung. I had no clue that I even got stung.
Wow.
I saw the reaction with the dogs. I was worried about them. 2 hours later, my adrenaline crashed and I went into anaphylaxis.
Certainly.
So that's how much adrenaline, all I could think was, not that I'm going to be stung by bees, I'm worried about my dogs.
Right.
And so you don't even think about your own safety.
Correct.
And it doesn't take much to kick that adrenaline level.
No, it doesn't. It truly does not.
So you could have have an injury, not even be aware that you've had an injury in a car
Absolutely.
accident.
And that's why it's important to just follow a little protocol. Always call the police, always get checked out. Isn't it better to be safe than sorry?
Absolutely.
That's what I was thinking.
So we have these cameras that have the ability to do video
Yes.
as well with sound. Is it legal for us to do that?
Oh yes, and especially when I've done it, I have just said, I'm just going to record this for our protection.
Yeah.
And that means the person that hit you, and because oftentimes each person thinks the other person hit them. And what they don't know is the comparative negligence law in Pennsylvania. Because if you go into someone else's lane of traffic, regardless, they could be speeding, they could be going too slow perhaps. But if you go into their lane of traffic, you're automatically at fault.
So if you're making a right-hand turn on a red.
Well, right-hand turn on red is fine.
So if I cut somebody off and they hit into me and I turned into their path, it's their fault or my fault?
Well, you're not, if you're making a right-hand turn, you're probably not at fault. It's the person making that left-hand turn. A right-hand turn, you're going to be fine.
Even though I might have cut somebody off.
But if you're in that neighboring lane, the passing lane, then you're cutting him off, then yes, it's going to be your fault.
Okay. So our first step then, no matter what the degree of the accident is to exchange information.
Right.
Is that required by law? Or can somebody say, I'm not giving you my information?
Then you call the police. They have to. They have to.
Take a picture of their license plate on their car and so forth.
And report it immediately. You don't wait a day or two. Because a lot of people say, well, he said he was going to pay for the damage.
Yeah, until they have to pay.
And then they don't,
Yeah.
right.
So if I'm driving down the road and I'm involved in an accident and I have whiplash or I have a laceration of some type, head injury, whatever it is, that's a whole nother scenario.
Absolutely, because you're talking about your medical, your bodily functions, opposed to just the damage to your car.
So that's an immediate call the police.
Absolutely.
And when you call the police, do they usually bring an ambulance with them?
They will call the ambulance, they'll meet you there, and there will be a detailed police report.
And that can be to your benefit if there's some litigation in the future.
Absolutely. Because don't forget, that's 2 years is a long time that somebody can make up a story or decide that it happened a different way, because everyone's minds are so powerful. How many times did you think you saw somebody and you could have sworn they were wearing a red jacket?
Oh, absolutely.
And it really was a purple one.
Absolutely, yeah. It's amazing what stress and so forth does to your ability to remember.
It does. It does.
So we have an ambulance coming, And even though I feel like I'm okay, sometimes you're even embarrassed, I think.
Most people are.
Yeah. It's still better to go in that ambulance and go to the hospital and be examined by a
Absolutely.
professional.
And if you don't want to get in the ambulance and go to the hospital, that's fine. Go immediately. Have someone take you immediately. You won't be able to drive, but you will have someone take you right away.
Because sometimes those injuries show up 6 hours later, 24 hours later, 48
Yes.
hours later.
Yes.
Especially in terms of like whiplash and that type of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we know the steps now. Call the police, regardless.
Right.
All right. I think that's good to know, because I would have probably said, we don't need to call the police. Well, I'm fine.
You are way too nice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And people mean well when they do that. They just don't know that they end up in a jackpot situation. And it's just better to do rightful action, do the right thing, take care of it. And if you did hit somebody and you are sorry, certainly you want to do the right thing and you tell them, I'm very sorry. How many times people scream at other people? No one has an accident on purpose. That's why they call them
So
accidents.
are you admitting guilt, and therefore, if you say, I'm sorry I hit you, and maybe they hit you,
Well,
do you admit guilt at that point?
well, you are apologizing, and you are right. If you hit someone, you rear-end them. It's a no-brainer. You rear-ended them. You can apologize. If they cut you off and you hit them, you're not going to apologize. Yeah. You're going to say, geez, I must have been in your blind spot. Because why else would they have cut you off to come into that lane?
Yeah. Now, you mentioned interesting thing with liability and insurance, and you used the term underinsured.
Yes.
And you had told me, explain what that means, underinsured, first of all.
Underinsured simply means that you don't have enough coverage. You don't have enough liability coverage to cover if someone sues you.
So you had told me a story one time about someone who, this was, I guess, happened years ago, and it was someone...
Grandmother took her granddaughter.
Tell us that story.
This grandmother took her granddaughter to a late lunch, and it was at a local fast food place. And there was nobody in the parking lot, and they got in the car and buckled up, and she looked, no one was there, backed out, and a 14-year-old young man speeding.
Okay, 14-year-old, not 16-year-old.
No, he did not have a license,
14-year-old, okay.
And he was speeding and on some kind of medication or drinking, I don't know really, but hit the grandmother and actually totaled the car. And
totaled his car?
Yeah, well.
And her car?
And her car. I mean, it was
in a parking lot?
Yes, in a parking lot.
Wow.
So he was going he was speeding. And the truth is, she lost her home because
she was underinsured.
She was underinsured. I guess her husband had passed away, and they had low limits of liability, and she never upped them. And so she lost her house.
Well, interesting scenario, but that sounds to me like a fault with the law, because you have somebody that is not legally driving, that's driving impaired, that caused an accident.
Yes.
And then the person that they hit loses everything?
Yes. Pennsylvania.
Where are our legislators here?
Yeah,
we need to talk to a few of those.
We're a comparative negligence state, and that is the problem. Right.
And it's that comparative negligence.
Yeah. We used to be a PIP, personal injury protection state, and then we went to no fault back in the 90s.
So what does no fault mean?
No fault, many people think it means that they have an accident, it's not their fault, it's not the other person's fault. It doesn't. It only pertains to medical coverage. So it only pertains to medical coverage, no fault. That's it. And that means that if we have an accident and you hit me, your policy is going to pay for your medical, and my policy will pay for mine.
Up to a certain amount.
Yeah, whatever you have, whatever your limits are. And then your personal,
10,000,
5 or
whatever.
10. And some people have more, but then your personal insurance, medical insurance, will come into play. Yes.
And then if there's more to it, then you have the opportunity to go after the person that hit you.
Absolutely, right.
Okay. Now, how does that apply to the damage to the vehicle?
Well, whoever is at fault, their company will pay to replace that vehicle.
I had an interesting situation happen 21 years ago.
Oh.
I was stopped actually in front of this high school, and somebody didn't stop and rear-ended me.
Oh.
And we were stopped in traffic for buses, actually. and it really didn't damage my car until they went kind of underneath my car.
Oh.
And then when they backed out, they pulled the bumper off.
Oh, right.
All right. So I sent the car to be repaired. You know, she wasn't hurt. I actually did have a little bit of whiplash and a slightly herniated disc, but it repaired itself.
Thank goodness.
There was no litigation involved or anything like that. My medical expenses took care of all the needs that I had. So when I got my car back, they delivered my car to my house and said, you have a $500 deductible, and we need the $500. And I said, I didn't cause an accident. I got rear-ended. I'm not paying, and it's not going against my insurance. And I said, well, she had the same insurance company that I did, and they decided they were gonna have to determine fault. And the fault was going to be determined, and until that time, she had to pay for her deductible, and I had to pay for my deductible. And I called up my agent, which was not you at the time.
Right.
And I said, whoa, that's not going to happen. You're going to determine fault? I'm stopped at a red light, in traffic, almost hit the car in front of me if they hadn't pulled out because I got pushed,
Right.
I said, you're going to take my $500 and then I'm going to wait 6 months to get my $500 back? Not going to happen.
Very frustrating.
Yeah. And how can something like that even happen?
That is a company decision, because many companies will do the opposite. When two people are insured with the same carrier, neither of them will pay a deductible. So I don't know who you were insured with at the time, but that was a company decision. And that's why it's important to know the agent you're dealing with and the company you're dealing with.
So you as a concierge, and I understand that term because I'm a concierge medical person myself.
Right.
And I like that because you really provide, I know I do, provide undivided attention.
Yes.
And I'm not on a time schedule.
Right.
And I'm not worried about the little bit of money the insurance company is going to pay.
Right.
And these people, usually when you work with somebody who's operating on their concierge service, you're getting quality service. That's what it's about.
Absolutely, and it's a lot of education too.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. So that people will know what is right and what isn't, what they can do and what they can't do. And the truth is, you can call me at 7 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock or on a weekend. It's important to know that I have your best interest at heart, as you do as well.
I know the insurance company that I talked about, at 5 o'clock when the office closes, it goes to some central location and you have no contact with your agent.
Right.
Which is,
and I know many people say I'm going backwards, but I think that your word has to mean something. I think that it is important to go back to basics.
So you're able to look at different insurance companies and quote prices?
Yes.
As opposed to being stuck into one.
Correct.
One carrier.
One carrier,
as the term you used. Yeah.
Because everybody has a different need.
So Dar, you mentioned earlier about tree falling on a house, whether it's your tree or your neighbor's tree. How do you resolve a situation like that with insurance?
It is your carrier that will take care of it. So if your neighbor's tree falls on your house, even though it's not your tree, it is not your neighbor's responsibility.
Wow. That's particular to the state of Pennsylvania?
No, it's everywhere.
That's everywhere?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, and people don't know that.
Now, what about Tucker, who has, and that was the idea, that why I asked you to join us on Healthy Pets, Healthy Owners. We're a medical show to a great degree. We do some variety shows here as well. But this stuff impacts our lives and can impact our health.
Absolutely.
And that's why it was important. I thought it was important for you to come on and kind of educate us into this.
Many carriers will not insure a Rottweiler or a Pit Bull. They simply, it doesn't matter if your dog is kind or gentle, they will not insure you if you have that breed of dog. You want to deal with a company where it doesn't matter. And because dogs can bite people.
Well, they're animals, and although we think they're human, and often they act like they're human.
Yes,
and, I don't.
Part of our family.
I think of him as my little boy here.
Exactly.
They still can become frightened. Their instinct is to bite.
Certainly.
And that can happen.
Right.
So what happens if my little Tucker decides to nip your little finger?
Well, if he breaks skin, you might suggest that I go and see a physician, and your policy will cover that. No deductible.
And so you want to make sure that you don't have a bacterial infection. You want to make sure there aren't any, any sutures or broken bone or so forth.
Right.
Does that now hit against my insurance because of my little dog nipped you?
Well, it is a claim on your policy, but it will not cause your policy to go up.
Okay.
No.
Unlike a car accident.
Correct.
And
right. Physical damage it does. Not Comprehensive, which is fire, theft, and vandalism, will not impact your policy's premium,
Okay.
but collision does.
Yeah. So if I had a slip and fall at your house,
Yes.
that would be something that your insurance company would take care of my medical bills or whatever.
Yes, because even if I didn't have a banana peel on my living room floor and you tripped over my coffee table and you would sue me because I ruined your life, you can't go on Dancing with the Stars now.
Yeah, like I have a chance.
Exactly. And so the liability does protect the owner of the home.
So it is important to have this coverage. What type of coverage do you generally recommend for the average person?
I really think that for medical, most people have $1,000 for medical, and that was great 30 years ago. But today, you really should have $5,000 on medical and the minimum of $300,000 for liability.
Yeah.
I mean, I prefer the $1 million coverage, but that is just to...
And that would be an umbrella policy
Yes.
as well?
Yes.
Yeah. And then you always save money when you do your home, your car, and
Absolutely.
and your
No matter what carrier you go with, it's important to bundle.
Darlene Butka, we're at the end of the show. How
Okay.
fast that went. And it was
did.
wonderful knowledge, educated me, so I'm hoping it educated our audience as well, and I know that it did. Thank you so much for being on, Darlene.
You're welcome. Thank
on
you for
Healthy
having
Pets,
me.
Healthy Owners.
Sure.
If you have any questions, give Darlene a call. She can help you. And I think we put up a graphic with your email and your phone number, so
Very
don't be
good.
surprised if you start hearing from some of our audience. in
I'll be
local
happy to
areas.
help.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
Remember, a healthy pet is a happy pet. When you're healthy, you're happy as well. You can also hear me live every Saturday morning at AM 1250, The Answer, at 9 o'clock. We'll see you next time on Healthy Pets, Healthy Owners.